What's up, everybody? Welcome back to another video from Pink Tourmaline. This one is completely wild. I was sent this video via Instagram, and I truly haven't seen anything like it. I reviewed negative NDEs, or quote unquote hellish NDEs, which really ended up being straight up life reviews for people that had lives that I felt like they felt particularly guilty about. And so it was just reliving their own life that created this hellish or nightmarish experience. But this is the first time that I can recall where I'm reviewing an NDE that actually describes a going to a place that reminds me of what's described in Dante's Inferno. I mean, really, that's what we're talking about here. And I wanted to share it because it's part of the story. It's part of the framework. It is an NDE. It is something that I believe, was legitimately seen by this gentleman that I'm going to show you in a moment. And I think we have to analyze it and try and make sense of it within the framework. Or does it indeed shift the framework slightly? I'm not sure it does, but we're going to go through, and I'm going to hear your comments as well in the comment section. Let me know what you think about this, and I'm going to try and make sense of it the best I can as we go through. And there probably will still be a lot of unanswered questions, but regardless, I felt it was really important to go through this, and it kind of blows me away in multiple ways. Anyways, let's get into the mix. Without further ado, here we go. This is a gentleman that claims he saw hell, and when I say hell, it's basically in the Dante's Inferno sense. I think a lot of the things he describes, I don't even know if they're exactly verbatim even in the Quran or the Bible or anything like that, because in those books, and I am not a biblical scholar by any means, but I believe it's more of a fire and brimstone type of description, as opposed to these specific torture methods that he describes in this video. And that reminds me more of what's in Dante's Inferno, which is obviously just a book. But anyways, without further ado, let's get into the mix. This is wild, wild stuff. Okay, so first of all, who is this gentleman that I'm going to be showing you today? It's Dominic Morrow. Dominic Morrow is an author, speaker, and near-death experiencer who said his life changed dramatically after he was shot twice in the stomach in Chicago and temporarily died. Morrow reports being clinically dead for 3 minutes and 47 seconds, during which he experienced what he describes as a terrifying journey into hell. Again, I don't think in anywhere in this testimony that it was said that this is hell or this is where you go forever if you do this, that, and the other. A lot of the things that he brings back are interpretations of observation. So he's calling it that. It may just be a realm. It may also be projections. We don't know, but just stating that up front. When he says he goes to hell, that is what his interpretation is. An experience that seemed to last far longer than the few minutes that passed physically. Now we hear that all the time, right? You have NDEs, and time doesn't really exist in the astral or these other realms, or it doesn't feel like it exists. So that's pretty common. He has spoken extensively about witnessing demonic beings, extreme suffering, and an overwhelming sense of regret and separation from God. After returning to his body, Morrow says the experience radically transformed his worldview and led him to embrace Christianity and dedicate himself to sharing his testimony. So it's very interesting where it leads us to, and we're going to end the video with his final message and his final takeaway for himself and for others, the message that he's trying to spread. And I think that's very important to recognize as we go through and try to interpret this experience. Now, one other thing I'll say before we get into the mix of all the testimony and the wild stuff that you're about to hear, if you guys remember when I first analyzed Betty Guadagno's near-death experience, or maybe it was even others, but I remember saying, well, yes, you get love bombed, you get this amazing experience, you get this amazing feeling, you're generally also given feelings of different emotions and things like that. And I said it was all an attempt to basically convince you that X, Y, and Z is the truth, and A, B, and C is what you need to go back and spread to basically further the goal of the simulation to stay intact. And I said, okay, well, it's interesting though, because most NDEs seem to be these types of love bombing positive experiences. And it's likely that is because they are more effective. This was just a theory of mine. They're more effective than perhaps negative experiences, or scaring people, or maybe scaring people in some way commandeers free will to such an extent that by violating those laws of free will, it's less beneficial for the entities running the simulation. I don't know. These are just theories. I said, but then again, maybe these types of fear-based motivations could be just as effective. I don't know. And I wasn't exactly sure why one was chosen over the other, why we hear these positive NDEs pretty much, I thought, for the most part, exclusively versus this type of negative one. Well, Here's a very negative one. Here's one that, like I said, reminds us of Dante's Inferno. Why are they having this intermingled in with these other ones? I don't know, but perhaps there is some reason as to, for certain people, this type of manipulation or message is more effective. Maybe they also want to mix these in to continue to create more confusion, just like we have all this confusion on the planet with different religions, different political ideologies, different economic ideologies, and so on and so forth. It's part of this same general theme of confusion and chaos to keep people guessing and wondering what's really the answer here. It's just a theory that could be why we have this drastically different account here. Nevertheless, let's listen to him and let's give it our full attention. Without further ado, it's a little rough to hear some of this stuff. I just want to give you that full warning, but here we go. This is from the Jeff Mara podcast. This interview is from 2 years ago. Never saw it, but it was sent to me. This is the beginning. This is him plummeting down into this realm. He calls them demons. To me, it sounds like straight up reptilians. I mean, he says they're reptilian looking. So it sounds like to me, he's just dealing in a realm with reptilian entities.
Switch, and I hit the bottom. Now, as I hit, it was darker still, but then all of a sudden I saw like pits. And the only way I can see is because the illumination of these pits were flaming. It was like just bursting like little furnaces. And then that's how I can see. But then what terrified me the most, okay, is the fact that as I'm laying there, the pits, when they were illuminating the space that I was in, I looked, you saw, I mean, thousands, as far as your eye can see, of these pits. And there were people in these pits, okay? Some of them were skeletal. Some of them had flesh hanging off of them. And they were like in pools of lava. But when I really looked, there were these demons, creatures, reptile-looking things. Some of them were huge. Some of them, I would just guesstimate them to say 13 feet tall, 12 feet tall. Some of them were small. Some of them were like 3 feet tall. They were just so grotesque, and there were so many of them standing around the pits while people were trying to crawl out the pits. They were throwing them back in. They had like these rusty, everything looks ancient there too, as far as the tools they were using. I'm gonna describe that soon enough. But they would try to get out, and they were kicking them in, and they were laughing and just throwing these people back in these pits. I mean, as far as your eye can see, I mean, and there's people screaming and yelling and in horror. Like it is undescribable. I wouldn't wish no one to even visit this place. But when I looked and analyzed and was looking at these demon creatures, I noticed a reptilian thing to them. They always, their eyes were red. Some of them eyes were yellow. They had the slits of a reptile. They had their hands were massive, especially the giant ones. The giant ones, they were the most intimidating. But even the smaller ones were more intimidating because I felt more of a hate. I always try to describe people that the hate that these demonic things, that these demonic beings have for us, it is so powerful. Just the hate alone. If that's how I know there's something holding it back. Even on earth, when they harass us and terrorize us, there's got to be some kind of shield holding back that hatred, because just the vibration from the hate alone is so powerful.
There you go. Reptilian type creatures, this idea of torture, coming out, getting pushed back in. Again, some of the key elements, though, that I want to point out here, again, he's calling it hell, like in a Christian sense or Muslim sense. But one thing that is questionable is this never ending? Probably not. As I mentioned before, the idea of something being eternal and never ending, whether it's this simulation, whether it's a hell, these ideas are nonsensical to me, because you stretch the timeline out to infinity. That means you have infinite possibilities to get out, to escape. This is illogical, I think, on its face, that something like this you could attempt it, but it would be an impossible feat to achieve, because there's always going to be another way to escape. And then on the side of hell being some sort of a punishment or a balancing of sorts, I guess, for you making wrong choices in a singular or finite life under the Christian and Muslim framework, where no reincarnation is even a thing, that just makes completely no sense. And I'm not alone on this. Paul Wallace has said something to this effect as well. So that in and of itself, as a reasonable or logical punishment, if it is indeed a punishment scheme, it just seems completely ridiculous. So I don't think that's exactly what he was witnessing. It's obviously how he's describing it and how he's interpreting it, which makes total sense based on what he knew before and what he was seeing, or maybe what he researched afterwards. But anyways, I thought it was interesting. Now, reptilians, obviously, we've heard many times that reptilians are likely involved at some higher level of this entire system. So that would make sense that you would see them there. They're participating in this. What is this? Is this just one other piece or portion of the astral? I imagine so. Just like we've heard that there's really amazing pieces, even insights with Tony from Insights with Tony talked about different areas of the astral that were kind of weird, like a hotel or an apartment building where people were sort of living lives similar to Earth. So I imagine there might be different areas or realms for different purposes. Or this could even be just a straight up projection, just like we talk about entities coming in, loved ones, deceased relatives, religious figures, so on and so forth, that come in as projections during these NDEs. This entire thing could have been one giant projection. Now, why is he shown this and other people like Betty Guadagno shown something completely different? There could be explanations that I am not aware of, but I imagine it has something to do with him as an individual and as a spirit, and what might be most effective in terms of convincing or manipulating him. And something different might have been more effective for Betty or for so many other people. But I don't know the answer to this. This is just speculation that it's case specific, just like the entities that are projected are likely case specific, Akashic record specific, whatever it is. Okay, that's just a first little clip. Now we're going to go into a little bit more detail about some of the torture, some of the negative stuff that he witnessed in this realm.
There is torture happening beyond. Okay, and I learned too. There's many departments or compartments of hell. Okay, and when I looked, they were ripping people's mouths open and pouring lava down their throats. They were, and the thing that really is a supernatural element to it, because of those who, because like I said before, some people had skeletal, just burnt skeletons, but some people had actual flesh on them. And when they would get ripped off, like I saw a demon one time, he just ripped off this whole lady's arm, and she was screaming in so much agony, and then her arm grew right back. It's hard to explain. It's rejuvenated. It came right back. And they were just doing it over and over, ripping off her apart, ripping her to shreds. And all of a sudden, her abdomen with no legs and no arms will start growing right back. And then they'll have other demons join in and do it all over again, all over again. It was just a repetitive thing of torture, nonstop, you know. And I saw that kind of same theme all over, but it was so indescribable what they were doing to people. They have all kind of like I was saying, ancient. Everything looked rusty and old, spears, like hooks. Things with hooks on them with chains, and they would take people and they would put these hook things in people's mouths, and then they would rip their whole heads backwards. And you can still hear the person screaming. And then yet, when they would rip the flesh off and rip the people, I saw a lot of this. And then I started to notice, when I was looking at the people getting tortured, I instantaneously knew, I knew for sure why they were there, what sent them to hell, okay? Because we all sin on the spectrum.
Okay, now we're going to get to the sins and the torture and how it's related to all that. I've got a separate clip for that, but this is very interesting. So it's repetitive. The idea is, because it's not your real body. It's the same thing that Insights with Tony. Tony says that he saw people eating food and doing things like that are part of existence here, not part of existence and not even necessary in the spirit body or in the astral. But he was seeing those things for whatever reason, why we don't know. And it's probably to some extent we're almost confused that we think these things are actually happening to us when it may be somewhat of a figment of our imagination or due to some sort of manipulation. Anyways, so he's seeing this happening on a repetitive scale over and over. Is there an end in sight? Is there not? We don't really know. I imagine there is at some point, but either way, this is the type of stuff that he was seeing in this realm and in this plane. Now, when we talk about the issue of free will, how could this fall in line with free will? How could somebody go to this or agree with this? My assumption is it's similar to the life reviews. Like once you go into the life reviews, or you get greeted by a counsel and they tell you this, that, or the other. Once you buy into it, then you're willing to agree to another life or agree to whatever it may be. Once you buy into that authority figure. Here, I imagine a place like this is again just a theory, but if you already buy into the idea of some sort of a place where you go and get tortured, like you read about in Dante's Inferno, or you feel guilty about certain things that you've done in your life, really guilty, and you feel you're very deserving of really bad punishment. Something like this could make sense because maybe implicitly you're agreeing to it because deep down you feel like, this is maybe where I'm going to end up going. This is what I feel like I deserve. This is just a theory as to the types of people that end up in a place like this, if such a place it doesn't indeed exist and it's not a projection. So it's not truly the people that have done the most egregious, the ones that feel the guiltiest about these things would be, yes. Okay, so now he's going to talk about the mechanism by which this particular torture gets chosen. This is in his own words and what he witnessed. Check this out.
But one thing, like I told you, there was a theme to the sins. There is a theme to it. The one that sticks out the most, the sin that you're doing the most, that sticks out, that you're addicted to doing, consciously and subconsciously, that's going to be the realm of your torture. That's going to be the most important part of hell that you will be in to experience that torture.
If you don't mind sharing, what was your sin and what was your specific torture for it?
Yes. Okay. Great question.
Real quick, before he explains this, to me, does this sound like any sort of balancing of good and evil? Does this sound like any sort of real justice, if you will, for something where you're doing this in a finite life and then you just have to endure it over and over? So I forget even about infinite, but just the way that he's describing it, it sounds insane. No, to me, what this is this is the one that was your biggest one in your mind, the one that you feel the guiltiest about. Therefore, that's the one that you would likely grant some sort of subconscious or implicit permission to have this done to you, because it's like, man, I probably deserve this. I feel like this is exactly what I need to be getting. And instead of saying, stop this, you're asking for it to be stopped, basically asking for your toll to be paid. And that could then feed into another avenue or another means by which to do this, and then basically extract energy, extract the negative vibrations that you're emitting, the pain, the horror, the anger, whatever it may be, as another means of Loosh extraction. Where he actually talks about his particular sin. I don't even know if it's that relevant per se. He talks about alcoholism and I think also violence, and how the punishment was fit for that. He basically says that they because he would drink, they would pour lava down. I mean, that doesn't even seem as though a fitting thing, except for if you wrote a book or a fantasy book, there's a relationship in terms of drinking, but you're drinking lava and then you're drinking alcohol. To me, that almost seems as if it'd be something that could make sense on a very basic level. You're pouring things down somebody's throat in both cases, but on some deeper level, does that actually balance or make things even in any way? I don't think so. That just seems really, really random. Again, I'm not saying, this is not to say that I am discrediting what he's saying. I'm saying it's not what I think. I have a different interpretation. I believe exactly he saw what he saw, but I have a totally different interpretation of it. And what it is this likely, just like these other positive NDEs prey on our ability to be lied to and manipulated and convinced of X, Y, and Z. That's exactly what's happening here, that he maybe felt that guilt, and somewhere deep down that this is what made sense for him to balance the scales of what he had done in his life. And hence that's why he was being subjected to it, and therefore felt trapped. And the big theme that's coming back here between everything else that we've seen is you got to trust in yourself. You've got to believe in your own power. And this is a way, I think this is only possible with somebody who has given away their power, given away their authority, or thinking that they need to be beholden to these other entities or whatever it may be for things that they've done. So why, in his estimation, and this is the thing that I think in the whole Christian framework or other religious frameworks that don't really make sense. You have the God, you have the bad, you have the good, you have the bad, you have this one singular life, and then you have to make all these choices, and everybody has a completely different set of deck of cards and circumstances. And part of it has to do with faith, but also has to do with sin. But if you have faith, you're saved for everything. And then it's just this one single thing, and you either go the good way or you're tortured. And if you get tortured, it goes forever and ever and ever. And so what is the thing just makes absolute no sense to me. It seems completely illogical, but for it being some sort of a control mechanism. But anyways, he is asked, why are the demons, quote unquote demons, reptilians, archons, whatever it will be, whatever you want to call them? I think it's probably synonyms for these entities at this point. But why do they do this? Loosh. It's Loosh. And he says it pretty much right here.
That one, demons hate us, and two,
Yes.
demons need us to sin so that we can feel pain because that's their food.
Exactly. They literally thrive off of us. That is their food. We are their food. Why you think, it reminds me of people, and that's why the Lord says he doesn't hate the sinner, but he hates the sin. Have you ever been feeling good one day, feeling full of, you wake up, you're full of life and promise and that ambitious that day, but you go hang around someone's house or go to someone's home. By the time you leave there, you're just drained. Your ambition's gone. Your joy is gone because they sucked your energy. They sucked your energy out. And 9 times out of 10 is one of their demons they have around them that sucked your energy out. That's their food. Your happiness, that is life, your life force. They need that. That's why they have a lot of, unfortunately, and I always pray for the children, okay? Children have the most purest and the most strongest sense of the life force that they need to feed upon because of the purity of it. The more pure you are, the more powerful the life force and the light of the Lord that you have in you, okay? So that's why they love to take children's innocence, mentally, spiritually, sexually, any way they can, because that's food for them. So that's why you got to protect the way you feel. You have to protect, do everything about your ways. That's why he gave us these instructions, because he knew what we're facing and who we're facing.
Okay, so again, this echoes that same theme, and I think Jeff Morrow was hinting at this too, but the way that he asked that question for food. But yeah, it just sounds essentially like what he's witnessing here. It's not really hell in the Christian sense or not, these other mainstream religion in those senses. It's really just another means or mechanism by which to extract Loosh, whether they're doing it through positive emotions or negative emotions. Here is one avenue, one source to gather this energy. So anyways, that's what I think this whole thing is about. These reptilians he's seeing are just reptilian. They're not actual demons, or maybe that's just a synonym. Who cares so much about the vernacular per se, but it still seems to fit in the framework of the system that we've come to understand. That's my take at this point. Now, talk about free will. How does free will play into this? Well, he mentions free will, not exactly maybe in the exact same way that I'm trying to get these questions answered about free will in terms of why would people be here and so on and so forth. But he does talk about free will. I thought it was worthwhile to showcase.
But he says, since they're, you know what? Since they're here, and it's also, he's not violating anyone's free will, because, angels at one time, I thought they didn't have free will. I thought angelic beings, when they were created for a certain purpose. Like a tree will always be a tree, right? They were created just to be a tree. A tree can't get mad and say, you know what, I want to be a bush now, right? Or I just want to be, I want to be an elephant. No, it's genetically, you have a purpose. Your purpose is that. But I didn't know there are certain realms of angels that do have a free will, just like we do. And one thing that I'm learning is that he doesn't violate free will. He doesn't violate our free will. He doesn't force us to worship him. He doesn't force us to love him. And he still yet bestows love on us and still do things in the background for us. So what I come to turn in my personal experience, that I've learned that these demonic forces are still here, only but for a short while. That's why they're working even harder now, because the time is short. That he's using them now at this point to elevate us to get closer to him faster. Literally. It's making us, and especially if you have an experience such as mine, without this experience, I wouldn't know God the way I do, and I hope everybody takes that bad, it's nothing, no such thing as a bad experience. It's only your perception of it being bad, because when God talks to you and upgrades you, he always puts it in the form of a crisis.
Okay, doesn't that remind you a little bit of the New Age life as a school? Hey, this is all for your benefit, etc. Anyways, but that's not the main point of that clip. The main point was this idea of free will that he does mention, because it's obviously not in the same vein that I was bringing it up. Hey, why are people going to this hellish place, or why are they being subjected to this type of treatment, or so on and so forth? But he does mention the idea of free will being there, being a constant theme, something that cannot be commandeered. Now, going back to the question, though, why are those individuals there? I think we've kind of answered that. I think it's that these folks that are there, or that come to this place and are dealing with this stuff, they have implicitly agreed to be subjected to this type of torture because of that horrible conscience that they may have about different things that have happened on Earth or different things that they've done. So that's their free will choice of basically signing off on this type of stuff. That's a theory that could be incorrect, but that's why I'm trying to make sense of all of this, if it is meant to all fit together and be part of that same narrative. Now we come to the last clip, and this is I think this is really, really important. Some people might gloss over this. This is really important. And by the way, I'm going to put a link to the entire interview so you can watch everything, because I was just taking a couple little excerpts. This thing is massive. It's over an hour long. But the final message that is being delivered by this gentleman, that's being delivered by Betty, that's being delivered by so many other NDEs, I think that's a really, really important piece to this puzzle, because I think that's why these experiences are happening, and that's why these people are being sent back, so they can convey some sort of a message. And you notice they're not all the same. They're different. I have an explanation for that too. I believe it's too confused. It's too confound. It's going to be not totally every single one is completely different, because then we might not give these experiences any merit, but there's going to be a subsect of the population that's going to latch onto these narratives that maybe already have a inclination towards Christianity. There's going to be others that are New Agers that are going to grasp onto what Betty's saying. There's going to be people that have an Islamic faith that are going to grasp onto people that deliver some sort of message that's in line with that. It's a multitude of these messages so that people can latch onto a particular narrative that stays so everybody still stays separated and the confusion continues. That's what I think. But now let's hear the message that he got in particular.
What practical ways can you give us for the average person to make those changes?
Sure. The first thing you can do is remove yourself, meaning it's not all about you. You know, I deal with people every day who suffer anxiety and depression. It's because what happens is their own flesh, including the enemy, compounds them to think about their own problems way too much. First thing you can do, go help someone else. Even, I don't care what you're going through. I don't care how many problems you have. If you become selfless, that is the cure for anxiety and depression. Right off top, period. When you stop making it about you, you will start changing, and then you will start opening up new ways. So you start off slowly. It's not going to happen overnight. Secondly, your prayer life will increase your faith. Like I tell people all the time, do not pray and then worry. You cancel out, you void out your own prayers. You literally, I have people, I used to do it. I used to pray, Lord, help me with this. And then right after I say amen, I'm still worried about it. Well, you cancel out your own prayers and you get no results. So the second thing you can do is when you pray, let it go. It is done. Just like.
So what's that message? What's that final message? Give up your power, give up your authority, right? It's basically put it in the hands of another entity, go up, worship, whatnot. And I think that's the big message in this particular scenario. That's the message that he was given to spread, which is again in line with giving away your power, giving away your sovereignty. I think that's the purpose. It's done in different ways and different NDEs through different messages, but it's the same core message. And that's why I think he had this entire experience from the vantage point and the perspective of the system. So that's how I think all this ties together and makes sense within this framework. But I really want to know from you guys, are there things that you think I glossed over, that I missed, that don't make sense, that don't totally meld together with, we could say, our current understanding of how everything works? Do we need to shift the model for how we are viewing and perceiving things right now as a result of this NDE in any significant ways? I don't think we do, but maybe we do. And I'm open to hearing your feedback. Let me know your thoughts, guys. I thought this was pretty startling for me, because it just seems so unique. Nevertheless, very informative. Let me know your thoughts. Thank you guys so much for joining, and I'll see you in the next video. Take it easy.